Today we're going to talk about multiple personality disorder, which is when a person has several distinct personalities within one body. In history, there was a famous person with multiple personality disorder named William Milligan, an American who also went by the name Billy. In October 1971, 3 robberies occurred within 10 days in Ohio, USA, and the victims all described a similar modus operandi. A person would kidnap them in a parking lot, force them to drive to a bank, make them withdraw money, and then run away. Due to the consistent patterns of the crimes and their close proximity, the police believed that the perpetrator was the same person. Because the criminal was skilled, the police suspected that he had a criminal record. Therefore, they showed the victims photos of people with criminal records, and they quickly identified the suspect as Billy. All 3 victims said, "It's him, Billy." Billy was 22 years old at the time, and had actually been imprisoned 2 years prior for robbing a pharmacy. He was released on parole 6 months ago. Later, the police found fingerprints on the victim's car that matched Billy's fingerprints, and they believed they had the right suspect. The arrest was carried out smoothly as Billy didn't resist, and he appeared very innocent. When the police searched Billy's home, they found a strange phenomenon. Although he lived alone, some parts of his house were very clean and tidy, while others were very messy, as if multiple people were living there. During the interrogation, Billy repeatedly claimed that he had never committed any robberies, and apologized sincerely if he had. The police believed that he was pretending, and nobody knew about multiple personality disorder before then. Here, we will briefly introduce the background of the era. In 1977, multiple personalities were not widely recognized even in the medical field. If this kind of situation happened at the police station, it was generally considered that the suspect was pretending. During the interrogation, Billy first denied that he was Billy, and then denied his illegal activities. So, on that day, the police put him and another criminal together and sent them to the detention center. However, when the prisoners got off the car at the detention center, the police found that Billy's handcuffs had been unlocked, and he was sitting in the car with a bewildered look, not knowing what had happened. Then the police asked the criminal who was next to him, and he said he had unlocked the handcuffs himself, saying that Billy was really amazing to have unlocked them so quickly. But Billy didn't seem to know anything about it. After being detained, Billy's personality changed drastically. At first, he felt very innocent when he was arrested, but in this detention center, he became very irritable and even started banging his head against the wall. Later, the police were afraid that he would commit suicide, so they put him in a restrained suit with his hands tied. To the police's surprise, Billy managed to untie himself from the restraint suit and use the clothes as a pillow to sleep. This made the police think that there was something strange about him. They called in a forensic psychologist to talk to him. The psychologist asked Billy what his ID number was, but Billy said he didn't have one. When the psychologist asked if his ID number was a certain number, Billy replied that it was Billy's number, not his. Then the psychologist asked him who he was, and Billy said his name was David. When asked where Billy was, David said he was sleeping. When asked where he was sleeping, David replied that he was sleeping here. The psychologist then tried to talk to Billy, but David refused, saying that Arthur did not agree. He warned that if Billy was woken up, he might commit suicide. David claimed that Billy would commit suicide if he were awakened. So I have to warn you that this story is going to be very confusing. The forensic examiner noticed that David kept biting his fingers and speaking in a very childish manner. The examiner asked him how old he was, and David replied that he was 8 years old and soon to be 9. The examiner explained that since David did not have Arthur's consent, he could not wake up Billy. David agreed to talk to Arthur and went to find him. After a while, David lowered his head, stared blankly, and started talking to himself. Then he lifted his head, and Arthur took over. Arthur was able to convince the examiner that he had multiple personalities because he spoke with an upper-class British accent, which is considered difficult to imitate if you didn't live in high society. He was also very interested in science and medicine, and wore glasses because he was nearsighted, unlike the other personalities. Arthur was the only right-handed person, and he was good at drawing portraits. When Arthur woke up, He was confused and asked where he was. The examiner explained the situation to him, and Arthur said that they needed everyone's consent to wake up Billy. Then, suddenly, he turned into Alan. Alan was a friendly and simple guy who was the only right-handed personality and smoked. After Alan, other personalities took over, and the examiner had to introduce himself to each one individually. Most of the personalities were friendly, but they were not good at talking and were introverted. Later, through a conversation with Alan's talkative personality, they found out how he switched personalities. Alan said that deep down inside him, there was a dark house where all the personalities stood in a circle, and a beam of light shone in the middle of the circle. Whoever wanted to control the body would stand in the light circle, and Arthur decided who would go in. Everyone listens to Arthur. Every time he switches personalities, his eyes go blank, and he keeps talking to himself. This process is actually all the personalities talking to each other, and in the end, Arthur decides who stands in the spotlight. Later, the forensic expert found the situation to be particularly complex, so they brought in more forensic experts and a more authoritative psychiatrist to examine Billy's situation. Most of these forensic experts and psychologists don't believe in multiple personalities, but after seeing Billy's situation, everyone believed that this must be multiple personalities, because all his personalities switch very quickly, and each personality has its own characteristics and is very stable. There is no overlap between the personalities. Each personality is a separate person, and after a long observation period, they concluded that there are a total of 24 personalities. Actually, Arthur didn't want to say how many personalities he had. Why? Because there are some personalities that Arthur doesn't like, so he seals them away. It was only after a long time of observation that they discovered the 24 complete personalities, because there were 13 personalities that Arthur didn't like, which were only discovered during his recovery treatment. So these 24 complete personalities proved that Billy's multiple personalities were not fake. Later I will tell you how to distinguish between multiple personalities and faking it. Of these 24 personalities, 23 of them have their own names, and they are both male and female. The youngest personality is only 3 years old, and the oldest personality is 26 years old. And each personality has its own appearance, with different hairstyles, hair colors, eye colors, and beard styles. How does the hair color change? When switching, he believes he is that hair color. The appearance of each personality is not described by themselves, but by other personalities. The youngest personality, Christine, who is 3 years old, is a little girl with blonde hair and blue eyes. This is a drawing of Christine by Ellen. He saw what Christine looked like. Are any of these personalities blood relatives? Christine has a brother who is also one of her personalities. The little girl has dyslexia, which means she can't read. But she says Arthur is teaching her how to read. This means that personalities can have an influence on each other. The oldest personality is 26 years old and is called Teacher. This personality doesn't have a name and is a fusion of the traits of the first 23 personalities. This personality has the memories of all the others, unlike the other personalities who don't have memories of each other because they are different people. Teacher is very smart and humorous and is not harmful. He is responsible for teaching all the other personalities, and that's why they call him Teacher. They pass knowledge to each other in the brain. Teacher believes that the other 23 personalities are his puppets, and that he is Billy. But that's not true. Billy is another personality, and he is the core personality of this person. His name is Billy, and he is always asleep. His memories are stuck in the moment when he was about to commit suicide in high school. The reason why Billy is considered the core personality is that he was the main personality before his other personalities split off. After he committed suicide, he developed many other personalities, and he was no longer in control, but was controlled by others. In other words, the other personalities that emerged later did not split off from Billy, but from other personalities. The reason why Billy is always asleep is that all the other personalities believe that if they wake him up, he will commit suicide, and they will all die. They don't realize that they will die, but they don't want Billy to die. They are all protecting him. Later, after the forensic doctor contacted Billy for 3 months, Arthur was finally convinced to wake Billy up. This was the first time Billy was awakened after he committed suicide. When Billy woke up, he was very panicked. His first question was whether he was dead or alive and where he was. The forensic doctor kept telling him that he was at the police station and that he was there to help and treat him. Billy gradually calmed down after hearing this. After talking to Billy, the forensic doctor only then realized that Billy only knew about his own personality and not the existence of the other 23 personalities. But the other 23 personalities all knew about Billy's existence. In fact, Billy has a very important personality that we should mention in advance. When he met with his lawyer, he showed a personality called Reagan, who is a 23-year-old Yugoslavian. He speaks English, Serbian, and Croatian, and when he speaks English, he has a strong Yugoslavian accent. This personality is skilled in weapons and fighting, and what's even more amazing is that he can control the sudden release of a large amount of adrenaline, allowing him to break a toilet seat with his bare hands. This personality is his crisis management personality that manifests when he is in danger or needs to destroy something. However, this personality has a problem. When the Reagan personality appears, Billy becomes colorblind, and his vision becomes black and white. Although colorblind people can usually see colors, they just can't distinguish them. But Billy's world is completely black and white. So, we just mentioned that the teacher has all the memories of the personalities. Later on, through this teacher, we found out why Billy became what he is now. Billy was born on Valentine's Day in 1955. His father was a comedian but was an outdated performer, and his mother was a nightclub singer. When Billy was born, his father was already unemployed, drinking heavily, and gambling frequently. The family owed a lot of money, and eventually his father could not bear this pressure and committed suicide. Billy was only 3 years old at the time. Then his mother married twice more, but due to the family tragedy and complex living environment, combined with the fact that his stepfathers were not good to him, this caused his personality to split and worsen. His youngest personality was only 3 years old, which means he had already developed multiple personalities at the age of 3. Later on, it was discovered that most of his personality splitting occurred during important periods of his life, such as when he was 4 years old. He made a mistake that led to his mother scolding him. This caused him to suffer a great deal of trauma, and he split into a personality called Sean, who is a 4-year-old deaf child. After becoming Sean, he couldn't hear his mother scolding him anymore, so Sean became a personality that protects him. Whenever he encounters a similar situation where someone speaks to him, but he doesn't want to listen, Sean's personality will manifest. There was his stepfather who treated him particularly badly. He often beat him and tied him up, causing him to develop a personality named Tommy. This personality was an expert in escaping and learned various martial arts during his constant struggles with his stepfather. So whenever he was tied up or in danger, the Tommy personality would be triggered. In other words, many of his personalities were actually triggered when he encountered difficulties or danger. As I mentioned earlier, the age of a personality does not increase. As he grew older and gained more experience, he developed more personalities. However, he also discovered that some of his personalities were completely unrelated to his experiences. He didn't know how they came about, such as the British or some female personalities. Until he was 17, Billy didn't even know he had multiple personalities. He discovered it when he suddenly had several days of no memory and appeared in a place he didn't know why he was there. This uncontrollable situation was like time travel and made him extremely fearful. Later, he couldn't bear this pressure and decided to commit suicide by jumping off a building. At the moment when he was about to jump, the Reagan personality emerged and suppressed him, allowing him to save his own life. However, from then on, Billy fell asleep, and his memories stayed in that moment. He only remembered that he wanted to jump, but there was no memory after that until he woke up in the police station.